So make sure, please, that you are comfortable and upright. That's kind of important. So probably you need to straighten your back a little bit more than usual, I would think, if you are a beginner, because we do have a tendency to slump forwards a little bit. So see what it's like to have your back a little bit upright, more than usual, but not so much that you're leaning backwards or it becomes uncomfortable. Let your shoulders be level, arms relaxed by the side of the body, but with a gap between your torso and the arms. Hands on your knees or in your lap. If you know the traditional posture, that's good. Otherwise, just palms down on your lap is good. That's a very comfortable and, one might say, stabilizing posture. You just feel quite comfortable and rooted to the spot. So that's partly what we are, of course, trying to do. We are creatures who run around a lot, especially nowadays. We're very restless. We run around. It's hard for us sometimes to find a spot and just be there and stop running around for a while. And of course, this running around has adverse effects on most people, certainly myself, on health, on state of mind, and so forth. So to be able to sit quietly without rushing around for a little while is something unusual, but worth experimenting with. Certainly the Buddha advised it, and without that, he would not have attained his awakening. He did move around a bit, of course, but then he's pretty much sat in the same place for 6 years. And then, when he was ready, of course, for us in this tradition, we feel it was the culmination of many lifetimes. But when he was ready, yes, he did move. He crossed a river, which is still there in Bihar, Bodh Gaya, and he came to the place which is now called Bodh Gaya. And the spot where he sat, decided to find his spot and sit down under the Bodhi tree. That exact spot is said to be commemorated with what we call the Vajrasan, the diamond throne. It's not made of diamonds, but diamond to indicate indestructibility, invincibility. So that spot is there in modern-day Bihar in East India. And a tree is there, which is said to be descendant of the tree Lord Buddha sat under. So we are engaging in a very, what should we say? One might even call it a very sacred act. Certainly quite unusual. Since today we are measured by, of course, how much we earn, by whether our shoes are there, or if they're polished or not, etc., and about how active and ambitious we are. That very often is what people measure us by. But here we're sitting without shoes, probably most of us, and doing absolutely nothing with the body except being still and continuing to breathe in and out. And even that is probably happening automatically. However, there is something to be investigated. Done is such a clumsy word. Done with the mind. We will reflect on how in this world we are among countless beings. We know that. Here at Tushita, there's 7 or 8 of us. and then online, 13 people. But there are countless others, aren't there? And all of them, although they have the good fortune, or whatever you may call it, to be here with us, they all want something similar to what we want, which is some kind of satisfaction, some kind of relief from the anxiety and subtle and gross fears of life, they do wish for some lasting satisfaction. And we would have to be a total egotist not to notice the state, the sorry state of many, many beings. And I'm not just talking about the beings who make the headlines at the moment, Ukraine, Armenia, etc., etc. I'm not just talking about that. Everybody you see, by and large, some are camouflaging it very well with makeup and smiles and whatever, incessant chit-chat. But if we look under the surface, what's going on with people, it's pretty bad news, you know. There's very few contented, happy, kind people, very kind, you know. And the Buddha gave a very clear reason for that. We are dominated by kind of ignorant self-grasping, which makes us rather self-centered and makes us want to grab what we think is going to reinforce us and push away what we feel is some kind of threat, however subtle, things we don't like. So we're constantly engaged in that. It's an exhausting process. So basically, and it leads to an incredible amount, at least for me and probably a lot of people, incredible amount of overthinking, thinking all the time. Thought after thought after thought, image after image. It's exhausting. It doesn't lead to any kind of lasting peace or satisfaction, or it doesn't help us very much to bring lasting happiness to other people's lives. It often just creates more problems. So anyway, the Buddha said we are totally right now dominated by these afflictive states of mind. So in other words, we are sick. Modern psychoanalysts may call it something else. They speak of neurosis and this and that, but yeah, we're sick. The sooner we recognize that, the better. Then we can take advantage of the medicine of the teachings, which helps us to totally eradicate this unfortunate, ignorant grasping at a self-identity in the wrong kind of way. And it undermines, it short-circuits the whole vicious cycle of anger, attachment, push-pull, aversion, clinging, with all of the subsidiary unwholesome emotions like miserliness and contempt and pride and so forth. So the point being made here is that as we sit here in relative peace and stillness, is our session together today going to be just for us, just for my sake? Or could we expand our circle of awareness, if you like, to include a few other people, maybe even a lot of other people who need help, who need guidance, who need someone to not be aggressive or competitive with them for a change. Could we be like that? Could we be someone who doesn't always want something from people in exchange for something one might be able to give them? Reflect on this, and since one has one's own way of looking at things, so please reflect on what's been said and generate, if you can, a sense that as we sit here, we are connected with others. We are not separate, and really, just as I need help, so do other people. And the more we understand our sickness, the more we understand how much we need the medicine of truth, of wisdom, compassion, and so forth. It is said that the Buddha at some point mentioned that all of his teachings were aimed at gradually leading disciples to an understanding of the ultimate truth, the liberating truth about who we are, how we exist. That truth, the truth that cuts through the illusion of a very solid, separate, independent self. And in another teaching, which is probably from one of the lineage masters, you see there's a whole lineage of teachers from the time of the Buddha up to now, unbroken, it is said, so that there's a living stream of wisdom, if you like, coming down for the last 2,600 years almost. And in one of those teachings, it is said that our situation is like that of a child who has gone to the fair, the Mela, the fair with their parents, maybe let's say with their mother. They've gone to the fair with their mother. Young child, maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 years old enough to enjoy the fair, young enough to be utterly desolate and panicky, were they to get lost at the fair? And this is what happens. Let's say we get lost. We are that child. We get lost at the fair. We are separated from our mother. Imagine, and maybe this happened to us once or twice in childhood, we got lost from, separated from our parents outside the house somewhere, and there's panic. There is sheer panic and disorientation. One is so afraid that, where is the mother? One is cries. Some kind people, of course, take notice, and they try to comfort us, but and they ask, our name and who, what our mother looks like, whatever. So with their help, finally, we are reunited with the mother. And imagine the joy of the child when reunited with the parent. Sheer relief, the delight, being so, bereft, so alone. And even though some kind people are helping, but it's no substitute for actual mother. And use the example of father if that's more beneficial for you. To be reunited again. Oh, wonderful. So the Buddha said that is what it is like when we understand deeply and directly the nature of our mind. After countless lifetimes of wandering around, wandering in what we call cyclic existence, through ignorantly misunderstanding reality, misunderstanding ourselves, being caught up in superficial levels of awareness, of consciousness, and suffering tremendously as a result, because those superficial levels are made up of a lot of projections, ignorant projections, like, say, a nightmare at night. It's a projection of the mind, and we, in a sense, needlessly suffer. So anyway, we should think how wonderful it would be if we could understand the deepest truths for ourselves, the nature of our minds, the nature of phenomena, and guide others to that. How happy, how delighted beings would be. Such a relief. So basically all these teachings we're going through are to help us lay the foundation for being able to understand ourselves and reality properly. Because right now it's a state of confusion. It's like a pond which has been churned up by a big storm. So nothing is clear. Nothing is clear at all. It just looks like a big soup of brown water, There's no clarity. There's a lot of wind and, buffeting. Okay. So I think we're going to investigate the topic of cause and effect, causality, as it's taught in in Buddhism, in the tradition of Atisha and the Tibetan tradition, based on the Nalanda tradition of India, based on the works of the great masters, Vasubandhu and all of the other great masters who wrote extensively, taught extensively on this topic, based itself on the teachings of the Buddha, on the sutras. And it will become clearer during the class, during this session together, how this connects with, as it were, finding at last the parent, the mother, the reality, which is what liberates us from all fear and also all selfishness, self-centeredness, let's say. Mm-hmm. So we were, of course, looking at refuge. So we'll wrap up refuge briefly, but very importantly, with some words of the commentary, very great commentary by Geshe Lungdup Sopa, who was one of the Tibetans, Geshes, that His Holiness the Dalai Lama sent to the West. And he taught extensively in Wisconsin. And they brought out, I think, 5-volume or maybe 6-volume now commentary on Tsongkhapa's text. Yeah, Tsongkhapa's text, we're studying the great treatise on the stages of the path. This is a commentary on Tsongkhapa's text. Okay, if there is a chair here, someone can sit in a chair, and you can put a cushion here. You don't need to sit so far back. You can put it here. Up here, yeah. And there's space on the left also. Yahan, beach mein aaye. Yahan aa jaiye. Maybe a small cushion if there's one. Okay. So I will read from this text because it is so good, this commentary by Geshe Sopa, and it will make it very clear why we are now going to talk about causality. Makes it very clear. And there's some background first. So please just listen very carefully. It'll just be reading for a while. Yeah, and those who have just come in, welcome. Take a few deep breaths. Thank you for coming to Tushita. Yeah. So this is at the end of the first volume of Geshe Sopa's, I think, remarkable commentary on the foundational practices. Yeah. So up to now, we've been studying how to rely on a teacher, the precious human life, death and impermanence, yeah, and then refuge, how to properly take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and then the precepts of refuge. We've also looked at some of the teachings, not all, some of the teachings on suffering, the suffering realms in the context of what we may expect after death. So that has been discussed so far. So then Geshe Sopa says, in this, for those who are interested, if they get this text, or you might find it in the library, we have it downstairs in our library at Tushita, but not for lending out. It's on page 504. In conclusion, what we've been studying up until now are the methods to bring us happiness in our future lives. This tradition, Lamrim, or Stages of the Path tradition, is not concerned with how to find happiness in the present life. Of course, it doesn't mean it's teaching how to find unhappiness in this life, but the main thing is not happiness in this life. Dharma practice is not directed towards how to enjoy this life. Its concern is beyond this life. In fact, in a sense, I'm glad you put that phrase in a sense, the Dharma almost advocates that you avoid the pleasures of this life. Those who seek only enjoyment in this life are chasing after very small, temporary, and unreliable kinds of happiness. That's sad, isn't it, to hear that? This is why some teachers say the Dharma is not initially meant to make us feel comfortable at all. It's not like a massage, you go to a really nice Ayurvedic place in Kerala for 3 weeks, you have a detox and all kinds of wonderful food and swaying palm trees and water. It's not like that. It's like a kick in the behind, wake up. It's like a wake-up call. The Dharma is supposed to torpedo our complacency, as one teacher says. So people get so involved with their desires that instead of finding happiness, they end up with more problems and more suffering. I wonder if any of us have had that experience. Even if they do find some short-term enjoyment, they create the causes for long-term suffering in the future. And theirs is a very narrow pursuit because it can prevent them from looking beyond the present to any long-term goal. That's interesting. We get so caught up with something, that we don't take cognizance of a long-term goal. And of course, we get fixated on teachings which appear to be saying, only abide in the present moment, don't look into the past, don't look into the future, which of course the Buddha did teach. But we have to take everything in right measure, If someone says, don't overdo sodium, it doesn't mean you give up salt completely, So we have to be careful when we hear teachings on mindfulness and present moment, what is it? The famous book that came out by, what's his name? I can't remember either the title or this very popular guy who seems to be, and I shouldn't say guy because some people respect him a lot. What's his name? The Power of Now? Eckhart Tolle. Okay, so all this stuff, very good, I'm sure, but if we overdo it, we think then long-term isn't important, Of course, long-term is important. We have to, if we are interested in Buddhism and what Buddha taught, we have to know what he said, about the universe, about life, about what is possible in the future. Anyway, let me just read, otherwise the commentary will take up all our time. In contrast, the Dharma emphasizes looking into the far distant future to prepare for the life that will come after death. So there's no might come, will come. From traditional Buddhist point of view, there's future life because consciousness is not the same as the brain, We cannot directly see anything that's going to occur after the moment of our death. It's completely dark to us. So there's nothing but a huge question. We just don't know what will happen. The Dharma teaches that after death there is the continuation of life. And it informs us of the kinds of things that may happen in the future and lays out the causes that will bring about those futures. So it's not random. It's not chaos. So according to this tradition, the method to find happiness in future lives has two parts: taking refuge and trusting in actions and their results, karma and its results. So we've looked at refuge. So now we have to look at actions and its results, he's saying. The actual method that brings happiness is following the Dharma teachings. The gateway to those teachings is taking refuge. Therefore, in the beginning, your main task is to learn where you should look for guidance, who's qualified to be a protector, how to take refuge. I mean, even if we're buying I don't know, I was going to say stereo system, they're out of date. I'm living in the past. If you want to buy what would be more up to date? Yeah. A latest smartphone, or if you want to know even where to go on holiday, which hotel to stay at, you do all this search, don't you? All this research on Google, you check very carefully what you are going to be taking refuge in, whether it's your smartphone or a place to stay, or shoes or socks or restaurant, everything you can check online. Yeah. You can also, of course, check who might be your future partner online. There's plenty of sites for that. So in the beginning, he says, your task is to learn where you should look for guidance, who is qualified to be a protector, how to then take refuge. First, you have to understand what the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha mean. Based on that, you have to develop confident faith in their ability to guide you in the right direction. Based on what you read online, you say, okay, yeah, this is going to be a good smartphone or a good pair of shoes or a good place to stay where I want to go, Then, based on that faith, you have to rely on them from the heart, not lip service, from the heart. Then you proceed to work under the guidance of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It should therefore be clear, Geshe Sopa says, that according to this tradition, it's not sufficient to take refuge merely with words. You need to actually do what should be done and avoid what should not be done. This is so simple, isn't it, in words, but it's very difficult for us human beings, especially in these degenerate times, to avoid what should not be done and to do what should be done. Actually, following the instructions and precepts is practicing the Dharma. In order to do that, you have to understand positive and negative karma. Okay, in language which is a bit easier, wholesome and unwholesome actions. Because karma has a bad resonance for some people, doesn't it? Because of whatever. Karma. Oh, that's old-fashioned. Okay, don't use the word karma. It means action. But it means actions with the understanding that actions have consequences. Karma, karam. Of course, this is English, karma. Yeah. No self-respecting Indian would say karma, right? Karam, karam. Well, how would it be pronounced in Sanskrit? Slightly differently. Huh? Karma, karma. Anyway, it wouldn't be karma. That's very Western, isn't it? We have a Western nun sitting here. Okay, so therefore, so in order to do that, we have to understand positive, negative karma and their results. Therefore, the next topic in this text of Tsongkhapas is karma. And Geshe Sopa says at the outset, to prepare us, action, he says action here, action and its results is one of the most difficult of all the Dharma topics. It's one of the key trainings on the path to both higher rebirth within samsara, as well as the door to ultimate liberation from this vicious cycle of existence. So if you don't understand karma and its effects, then you cannot practice accordingly, and all the roads to higher rebirth and complete freedom will be blocked. That's quite a statement. So if you say, well, I'm a Buddhist, but I'm kind of a modern Buddhist, I'm kind of a open-minded Buddhist. So I'm not going to accept karma, because I think it's a bit out of date. And, there's all these modern books and there's stuff on chaos theory and this and the rest. And I'm not going to accept karma. In fact, I think it's totally out of date. So if we start thinking like this, then this becomes a problem. Of course, we should be open-minded. We don't have to accept everything you hear. Even the Buddha said that. But what this teacher is saying, the commentary, he's saying that this is, sine qua non. Without this, we can't proceed. Why? If you don't understand, you can't practice accordingly. All roads to higher rebirth and complete freedom will be blocked. In order, and this is very important for the person of small scope, yeah, we spoke about the small scopes. Okay, let's see who's awake today. Sorry, I'm very rude. What are the 3 scopes? Yash, you are the resident volunteer of Tushita. In case a newcomer comes to Tushita and asks you, what's all this Lamrim stuff that's being taught, what will you say? What are the 3 scopes?
Small scope, middling, middle scope, and then high scope.
Good. Small, middling, higher. So what are they? What's the small scope mean?
It's only for the self, like, that is for.
Excuse me?
Not for the Buddhahood, that's the highest one, where we think about the.
Don't worry about that. What's the small scope?
Just self-liberation.
What's that?
Self-liberation.
Self?
Liberation.
No, that's the middling scope. Anyone want to help with the small scope? You should know, you've been 30 years coming to Tushita. 20 years. 20 years, Sonaliji. What's the small scope?
Present life.
Is that a question? I'm asking you to answer a question, not ask a question. Okay, total failure here. Everyone is going to be put in detention. Rebecca ji, what is the small scope? Okay, I'll have to ask Ajir ji.
Second chance.
Huh?
Second chance.
Excuse me?
Second chance.
Second chance?
It's a higher rebirth.
Higher rebirth means?
In the next life.
Yeah, so what would be the example of a higher rebirth?
In the 3 upper realms, let's say, God, demigod.
So you think being a god is a good idea?
No.
According to Tsongkhapa? So which rebirth is actually best? What are we aiming at in the next life? Human, yeah, with all of the conditions to practice. What's the middling capacity person thinking about?
Nirvana. Self-liberation, nirvana.
Nirvana, good. And the great capacity person?
Buddha.
Buddhahood, fantastic. Good, so Yash passes the test. Excellent. Huh?
98%.
98 only, yeah. Yeah, that's pass. Very good. So, but you fail, Sonaliji. Yeah, you have to, we'll put you in detention. If, where was I? If you lack trust, you won't undertake the actions recommended by the Dharma. So, we have to engage in the practice of casting off the negative, building up the positive. In order to protect yourself from rebirth in the lower realms, you must keep yourself from engaging in non-virtuous thoughts and actions. That depends on our faith that wholesome karma brings good results and unwholesome karma brings negative results. So the practice basically of the person of small capacity is to take refuge and really try and avoid unwholesome action, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, idle gossip, and then harmful intention, covetousness, and a mind full of wrong views. These are basically the things we try to avoid, and we try to practice the opposite. So instead of killing, we try to, save life as much as we can, to the extent of, if we become serious at it, even fishing with our finger, little insects that have fallen into the water closet, because they don't want to drown in your pee-pee or poo-poo. So you take them out, and, and they're very happy usually. They fly away, or they don't say thank you, but that's okay. So that would be wholesome action. But of course, life being what it is, we have to sometimes engage in a lot of negative action, like killing termites. So then what you do then one purifies, one engages in purification practice. But of course, we try to create the cause that we don't have to do anything like that by taking, by maybe using certain materials or building in a certain way, not using third-rate wood, making sure walls don't become damp in the monsoon. Yeah, basically it's tough. But then nothing is that easy in samsara. If you have trust, if you have that trust in cause and effect, he's saying, you can properly engage in the practice of casting off the negative, building up the positive. Understanding and trusting this relationship is one of the keys of Buddhist practice. It's the foundation for all of the Buddhist goals, meaning future life happiness, liberation of nirvana, total enlightenment of a fully awakened Buddha. In short, the root of all happiness is trust in causality. Trust in causality of karma. Therefore, the subject matter of the next volume in this series, it's another big, thick book. It's totally devoted pretty much to karma, the commentary on Tsongkhapa's text. It's developing the faith of conviction that is the root of all temporary happiness and ultimate well-being. Every positive experience, and this is difficult to, of course, for us to accept because we consider ourselves scientific, rational, humanistic, all the rest of it. We find it difficult to accept this statement that every positive experience, all the good things of this world up to the bliss of highest Buddhahood, is the result of virtuous activity. And not just in this life, but previous life, virtuous activity as well. The foundation for acting virtuously is deep and confident trust in the general process of causality. This kind of trust is called mundane right view. Mundane right view. Even holy beings, Aryas, those who've realized emptiness and are therefore on the supramundane level, have this mundane right view. It might be better to call the understanding of the process of karma and its results the phenomenal aspect of right view, the phenomenal aspect of right view. Then we could call the realization of emptiness the ultimate aspect of right view. Okay, the phenomenal aspect of right view, Geshe Sopa is saying, is the understanding of karma, how it works, and the ultimate aspect of right view, of course, is understanding deeply how things exist, the emptiness, the lack of inherent existence of self and others and other phenomena. At any rate, if you do not have a clear understanding and a firm trust in karmic causation, you are not on the path as it was taught by the Buddha. You might like to think you are, being maybe part of a kind of a, I don't know, trendy set of people who dabble in a lot of things and haven't really bothered to study, haven't had the good fortune to have great teachers like His Holiness and others, and access to great literature, authentic literature. Then, of course, we have some strange views about things, and we will only want to believe what suits us, our bias, and we won't want to investigate different ways of looking at the universe and how it works. We will be, we'll develop a lot of reasons not to investigate the right mundane view, the phenomenal aspect of the right view, causality. I'm being a bit harsh, but so is this commentator. He's being just, not harsh, he's just being, it's like, if you know something that this is going to cause you suffering, then you just say it like that. This is causing suffering. This is not causing suffering. This is causing happiness. If you don't want to believe it, then, you're in trouble. Of course, the difference between Geshe Sopa and me is that he has experienced it and knows. I just believe it for now. I don't know for sure. Someone like the author of this book knows for sure. I just have what's called maybe correct beliefs. Belief in the right direction, but not total confidence yet. They say total confidence in all this comes really when one has very high realizations also of, ultimate truth. Then conventional truth like this becomes crystal clear. we'll stop in a bit for some discussion, but there's just a bit more I want to read, because this is still the ending of the chapter on refuge, as Geshe Sopa prepares us for the main teachings on karma. At that point, we'll go back to Tsongkhapa's text, the root text, and then later on, we will keep on consulting Geshe Sopa. By the way, when this book was offered to the Dalai Lama at its completion, the first few volumes, he apparently, according to the translator, he tapped it and said, yeah, this is authentic. This is authentic. You know, the real thing, the real teachings, you know. Not just someone having flights of fancy or trying to be poetic, you know, or something, or someone who's just not qualified writing. So yeah, this is authentic. We can rely on this, books like this. Some things we can't really rely on, I think. They sound good and they may be in very interesting language, you know, but yeah, they're just not quite authentic enough. A reliable and permanent state of bliss is more satisfactory than temporary pleasure. You have to work as hard as you can with your body, speech, and mind to achieve your primary goal, which is freedom from all samsaric suffering. So after the first step of taking refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you must develop confidence in the heart of the Buddhist teaching, which is karma and its results. In order to reach your goal of liberation, you need to behave, live, and practice in accordance with the basic laws of karma. Once you understand and trust in the action of karma, you will naturally make living according to these guidelines the core of your practice. So, and then a very nice paragraph, obviously directed at people who are interested to take these teachings to heart. And of course, remember, these teachings were given to some very interested, I think, very genuine students in America, in Wisconsin, that Geshe Lao taught over many years. Those of you who have an interest in practicing these teachings should consider each of the practices on the stages of the path, integrate them into your mind by reading, studying this text, or by listening to teachings. First of all, learn what the stages of the path method is about. Take as much time as you can to study and examine the points of the practice. You should come to realize why this kind of meditation is important, what it does, how it works. Then you should try to sincerely develop the attitudes that are described. If you make the effort to practice as much and as well as you can, it'll be most fruitful. As I've said many times, if you use these teachings properly, they will be like medicine. They will alleviate the mental afflictions causing all your suffering. Initially, this medicine will just subdue some of the mental afflictions, but eventually, even the most fundamental roots of the disease can be removed, and the disease of suffering will be completely cured. This can happen if you make the effort. If they just stay in your head as abstract knowledge, they'll never help you. It's like being sick but refusing to take the powerful medicines in your possession. And if we become someone who just listens to teachings, then we develop what they call a hard crust. We become immune to Dharma in some sense. Because we say to ourselves, well, I've heard this so many times before. The more times you hear the teaching, the more closed your mind will become. It won't get smoother or softer or healthier. It'll just get tougher and tougher and tougher. So these instructions here are the essential and most effective heart of the teachings. They've been gathered together from many sutras and from great teachers and yogis who taught what they learned from their own experience. These teachings have the potential to greatly help everyone who sincerely practices them. You should focus on each subject as you read the many details and various examples in the text and in this commentary. Think about each point step by step. Contemplate what you've read. Meditate to bring these ideas into your mind. If you do this daily and you do it continuously over a long period of time, it will be very helpful. So with that, Geshe Sopa ends his chapter and the first volume of his great commentary on Lama Tsongkhapa's text. And remember, Lama Tsongkhapa's text is also a commentary on the great Atisha's Lamp on the Path to Enlightenment that we mentioned a few weeks ago, the original text where he talks about three kinds of persons. So before we start the actual chapter on karma in Tsongkhapa's text, which is chapter 13 on page 209 of the English translation, just to give you an idea, here in this text, the original text of Tsongkhapa, he deals with karma basically in 40 or 50 pages, pretty much. Although he talks about it again and again, obviously. But Geshe Sopa, pretty much a whole volume, thick volume, is there in the commentary, showing how important this topic is. Yeah, the actual teaching on general characteristics and the various kinds of karma, Tsongkhapa just deals with it in 36 pages. And Geshe-la takes, 300-400 pages. So there's a lot to be learned if we want. So mercifully, if we like, Tsongkhapa is quite short, but obviously quite dense, and there's a lot to be spoken about. Up to now, anything anyone wants to say, especially new people who may kind of find everything a bit strange, but also all students who have heard this again and again and keep on forgetting again and again, like me. Anything? I do not take silence necessarily as noble silence, but it could be. I'm allowing people to unmute themselves if they want. Anybody? No, you all accept what Geshe Sopa is saying? No problem. No problem. Now we know the key to happiness is to begin studying Buddhist teachings on karma. You're all going to go out and buy your copy of Tsongkhapa and the commentary from, I'll tell you, the bookshop. You'll get a 25% discount. It's South X1, and there's a good Bengali sweet house nearby, so you can always drown your sorrows with sweets and coffee as you read about karma.
Did you have a question about refuge?
Yes.
So, is it like in Hindi we will say Sharan mein jaan?
Ji.
Same thing?
Ji.
Okay. And when we take refuge, when a lay person takes refuge, is it automatic that you're taking the 5 basic precepts?
It depends on the Lama. Sonaliji is referring to the 5 precepts of not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and not taking intoxicants. So it depends. Some lamas are quite strict, but I remember Lama Yeshe, especially with beginner Westerners, mainly 50 years ago, 40 years ago anyway, and probably 50 years ago for those, because that's when the lamas started teaching in the early 70s. So he would say to people, okay, you can take 1 or 2 of the precepts, and if you take the precept on no intoxicants, then yeah, okay, you can occasionally have small amount of alcohol, but not enough to become intoxicated. because it's basically about getting intoxicated. Yeah. But if you ask Lamas, if you took refuge or something with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, then he would say not a drop of alcohol now. So then I guess you have to pick and choose, like online, what you want to buy, you know. What version do you want? Do you want Lama Yeshe's version or you want Lama Zopa Rinpoche's version? So you have to check beforehand on what, you know, Lamas, their, you know, level of strictness. What would you say, Venerable? What your Lamas, what have they said about the precepts?
No alcohol.
No alcohol at all. And would they insist you take all 5 precepts? Or are beginners allowed to take just a few?
Sometimes they also say, like, if you really have a difficulty with some of them, you could also take 4, or you take less. And then maybe later you can adjust. Maybe you can do it like that. And I thought His Holiness also said one time with Lamrim that he also had a person who wanted to take the vows, but then he said, I have a problem, really. I cannot take
Intoxicants?
Yes. And then he said, okay, then maybe sometimes just a tiny little bit. And then you still keep the vow, but you only take a little bit. What you also said, not to get, you know, drunk or that. So sometimes they're a little bit mild and see, I think they just look at the person in front of them. So they can, you know, adjust if it is needed.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very skillful. I mean, you can't just tell everyone, you've got to take all 5, you've got to give up total smoking, or they say someone's been smoking for 30 years, you know, they're not necessarily going to be able to give up immediately. But yeah, the aspiration. I think one has to accept not killing, isn't it? Would that be? If one's taken refuge, then you're not supposed to harm.
Cannot smuggle with that one.
Sorry?
You cannot smuggle with that one. It's like,
yeah.
Definitely not.
And then if you have a termite infestation and you find that you are having someone kill them, then one just has to be very, regretful and purify properly, for example. Or else, if you're really strict, just allow your whole house to be eaten up and go and live in a cave. Maybe if one was really strict, one would do that, but that requires a lot of courage. And going in the face of what all your relations will be saying to you. And that is quite difficult because one is caught up in the 8 worldly feelings. And one of the 8 worldly feelings, as we know, is reputation and praise and blame. These are very difficult. One doesn't want to be blamed and have a bad reputation with certain people. Usually that's our case. The people who are free of that, they're amazing, but very few and far between. Or as one Lama said, which caused me to check with that Lama whether they actually meant it, he said, just going by what other people say, doing what other people want all the time is certainly not kindness. It's not kindness at all. Is always acting according to other people's expectations of you is not kindness at all. I read that in a coffee shop at Oxford bookstore in Connaught Place. And yeah, I was a bit uncomfortable with that, but it makes sense. It makes sense. It's in the introduction to the biography of Dingo Chense Rinpoche, Brilliant Moon. There's a thick biography. That's the introductory chapter, has that. By Dzongsa Rinpoche. Yeah, quite powerful introduction. Okay, anything else? Welcome to latecomers, very latecomers. Oh, the latecomer disappeared immediately.
Rinpoche's tradition I found is quite interesting.
Who, sorry?
Trungpa
Rinpoche.
So they have to take all the 5 almost every morning. and they said it lasts for 24 hours. But the day, let us say you want to join some party, you can, you should not keep that vow on that day. Today, no
Yeah.
drinks like that. Yeah.
So the day you want to kill someone,
No,
that is
that is
inviolable. Yeah, that sounds kind of nice. That, of course, he's teaching early 70s Americans who just come out of, the hippie era. So of course they need some careful nurturing. They can't.
Did you believe everyone that, for instance, in your tradition, that this lasts for 24 hours?
You take
And
it,
that's
you
why
take it for the
every
rest of
24 hours one is to renew that.
No, you just take it for the rest of your life. and you
Rest
take
of
it,
the
you
life.
take it.
We have the 8 Mahayana precepts. That's 24 hours, but I haven't heard of this one.
Yeah.
But that's great, isn't it? That's the richness of the Dharma. If a teacher can help people
Yeah, that's how.
in the context, that's great. That's why we have so many
But
different
that's
kinds of
also
teachers.
that you can see that the Lama is just looking at all the instruments there, what is possible and what is not possible, and what is best
Yeah.
way to adjust and
Yeah.
still to help people.
Yeah, they're so different, some
Yeah, I think
approaches.
definitely the skillfulness on the part of the teacher is definitely there.
Yeah,
Instead of saying, just follow all the 5 strictly,
yeah.
and people just leaving.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, just follow 4, just follow 2, just follow 1, even to begin with. Some change will definitely take place in the mind. So I think skillfulness of the teacher will be definitely there.
There's a story that Lama Yeshe went with some of his students to meet Trungpa Rinpoche in America somewhere, I guess. And I don't know how long they were together, but they went. And during the course of the meeting, it was obvious either that Trungpa had been drinking or he had some drink during their meeting. And so after the meeting, some students started complaining when they went home. They started complaining to Lama Yeshe that, look at this guy, he was drinking. And then Lama Yeshe really scolded those students, saying, you don't understand, you don't know who this person is. You don't know, how elevated, how realized he is. Don't criticize, it's like don't criticize what you can't understand. Yeah. The line of the Dylan song, yeah. Don't criticize what you can't understand. Times they are changing. So yeah, we find it very easy to criticize because we also don't understand the context. We don't have skillful means. We judge people very quickly. If they're a Buddhist teacher, then, they should be, 100 miles away from a wine bottle. But that's our limited mind, I guess. But I have to say, I do like the fact that my teachers have been very pure monks. That is useful. It is useful for me, but it might not be for some people. I know some people, and I think you also know, in the other sanghas, people who really like lamas who are a little bit more unusual and who dress up occasionally and look weird and do all sorts of strange things, compared to what ordinary, well, not ordinary, but, more conventional teachers behave. So we need all kinds, I guess. Yeah.
I think one thing that I've heard once, which relates and summarizes all of it, is be curious, not judgmental.
Mm.
Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a summary to.
Yeah, be curious in the beginning. Absolutely. Yeah. We have to be. It's easy to start judging from the word go, I mean, if it was a traditional Tibetan setup, as soon as you go into the room, you say, why is this guy sitting up on a chair, higher than us? Why are there all these pictures on the wall? I mean, the mind is instantly judging, through not understanding, etc., etc. It's happening all the time, isn't it? Mm.
Kabirji, can
Jay.
I just ask clarification about a statement you said earlier? You mentioned that, to act as per people's expectations.
Mm.
It's not being kind to yourself,
He didn't say kind yourself. He just said is not kindness at all.
It's not kindness, yeah, but you know, most of the time people expect, and you know, if you don't act accordingly, the comments you get is you're selfish, you're
Yeah.
not being considerate. So can you please expand a bit on what?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes it's true, isn't it? But if one is someone who is doing what he's talking in the context of someone, I guess, who has some level of compassion and so forth, and trying to renounce the eight worldly feelings, yeah, remember praise and blame and pain and gain and loss, pain and pleasure, yeah, good reputation, bad reputation, praise and blame, yeah. So if one is working towards that, then we can't just be guided by what other people expect of us. We can't be rather guided by always wanting to look good. That's the point, in other people's eyes. So you look good if you do what they want you to do according to conventional standards. So so if they want you, if your parents or whatever really want you to get married, then you get married in order to make them happy, even though it may make you and your partner very unhappy. Still you do that. You're always acting according to what other people expect. It's not kindness. Literally, it can be very unkind. That's one big example in India, isn't it? Being pressured to marry. And how many happy marriages have people seen? And maybe the purpose of marriage is not happiness. I don't know. It's just to reproduce, right? Or whatever. Or for one's name to carry on. People want the name to carry on and to be looked after in old age. So that seems pretty selfish in one way. So I can't comment much on that, but you have to think about it yourself. The pressures one may be under. So is it kindness to always bow down to what other people want?
I think Matthew Lecoq would be one of the great stories on this.
Yeah. But
Because at the age of 29, he did his PhD under the Nobel laureate. His father was a great philosopher in France. Mother was a great artist. They all expected that he would really shine so well in the academics and Nobel laureate type. But what did he do? He came and he was somewhere near Darjeeling, he became the monk. And virtually no connection, they said, to the family. And then there was a journalist who knew the father and the son. They said that, okay, both of you should have a dialogue. And he said, okay, if the father agrees. And then the dialogue was organized. And the book came out, which is called The Monk and the Philosopher. But what I'm saying is that today he is one of the great scientists, in the sense that all the people who really want to study human consciousness and happiness, they are all flocking to him. So he becomes a scientist of the different type. He followed. I mean, if you had really gone by the pressure of the expected society, maybe he was working somewhere in the laboratories.
Yuji is giving the example of Matthew Ricard, who didn't follow what his family thought he would and become a great scientist, but came to India and became a monk and followed Dingo Chenmo Rinpoche and became kind of anonymous for a while, I guess. And now, of course, it's much sought after. And I think he has a title of being the happiest man in the world.
He's the happiest man. Yeah. The Western journalists, they have given this title.
He may not have been if he
Yeah.
stayed biochemist or whatever. Yeah. So that's, I mean, all the great, Machig Labdron, the great female practitioner who started the church tradition, she, so much trouble she had, because they, in that very male-dominated society of Tibet in the whenever it was, 12th, 13th century, it wasn't easy to become someone who gave up marriage and family and just devoted themselves to spiritual practice, if you're a woman. But she did all that. Yeah, totally. And became highly realized being.
What's the name, Kabirji?
Machik Lamrim. Machik,
Machik
M-A-C-H-I-G. Labdron. Very great woman practitioner. Many of these church tradition of cutting the ego practices stem from her 13th, 14th century, I can't remember exactly the century. She was very great, very, very great practitioner. And probably we'll find this with so many really good practitioners. Atisha, he was born a prince. You think his parents wanted him to, go off?
Shanti Deva also.
Shanti Deva, yeah.
Shanti was also a prince.
Lord Buddha, his father created this artificial paradise for him, which he broke out of. Yeah. So, where are we? So 20.
This was in answer to her question.
Yeah.
I don't know whether she is happy or not.
Yes, very happy with that. And the example meant to regard. Thanks.
Okay, so now let's look at briefly, because we've only got 15 minutes left, the general characteristics of karma. And this is something we were taught very carefully in the early years with Lama Rinpoche and in the textbooks that we looked at. These four root reflections regarding karma. One, certainty of karma, that it's certain, it's something certain, it's not maybe. Two, the magnification of karma, and we'll come to that, magnification of karma. Three, not experiencing the effects of actions you did not do. You won't experience the effects of actions if you didn't do them. Sounds obvious, but there's something to be said about that. Actions you have done do not just evaporate into the ether. They don't perish. So you planted seeds, the result will come at some point, if not purified, if not uprooted. You must make it your practice to properly cast aside non-virtue and adopt virtue. For unless you reflect at length on the two kinds of karma and their effects, and then properly cast aside the non-virtuous and adopt the virtuous, you will not stop the causes of miserable rebirths. And they've already been spoken about in depth in a previous chapter, when the Tsongkhapa spoke about reflecting on your future life. He gave in graphic detail, not so much on the animal realm, because that we can see on TV, but on the hell realm and the hungry ghost realm. You don't get programs on TV. Discovery Channel doesn't have anything on the Prets or Narakvasi. They did, they would be the buildings of the TV studio would be burnt down. They would be stopped from airing that kind of material. Of course, it's impossible without clairvoyance to understand those realms. Whereas animal realm, you just need human eyes and you can see it. So, thus, you may fear the miserable realms and yet not be able to escape what you fear. That's true. You may be afraid of a disease or something, or a very powerful person, but not know, how to deal with it, how to escape that fear, how to prevent that disease happening. Consequently, in order to be protected from the miserable realms, at the time when you must experience the effects, you have to restrain the mind from engaging in non-virtue at the time when you are creating the cause. It's too late when you're experiencing the effects, he's saying. At the time of the cause, you can do something by not creating the cause. There's a choice. But this in turn is contingent, dependent upon attaining conviction about karma and its effects. So some people that you may know didn't believe there was really anything like COVID, the proper cause of it, and so they didn't have any faith in vaccines and so forth. And maybe some people, as a result of that, they suffered more than they needed to, or they even died. It's possible, so we may be afraid, or we may not believe. You see that there are such miserable realms, or you may, of course, believe in the animal realm, but not, and you may even believe in rebirth, but you may believe, like many people I've met, that once a human, always a human. You will be reborn as a human if you are a human now, which, from Buddhist point of view, makes no sense. Just because you have a nice garden now doesn't mean you'll have a nice garden in the future if you don't take care of it. Plant the right seeds, take care of it. Why should you have a nice garden in the future? You'd have a garden full of weeds and poisonous plants rather than all the flowers and beautiful things you have now. So in that sense, yeah. So there is. So this part of the text is about developing the faith of conviction that is the root of all temporary happiness and definite goodness, certain goodness. Okay, so here, reflecting on karma and its effects in general. This is the chapter looking at it in general. The next chapter, 14, will be looking at there are varieties of karma. So this chapter is just looking at general characteristics, and it's a very short chapter by, such standard. It's only 6 pages. Yeah. Certainty, magnification, not experiencing the effects of actions you didn't commit. Actions you have done don't perish. So let's look at the first part, the certainty of karma. Certainty of karma. All happiness in the sense of feelings of ease, whether ordinary or noble beings, including even the slightest pleasures, such as the rising of a cool breeze for a being, say, born in hell. It all arises from previously accumulated virtuous karma. It's impossible for happiness to arise from non-virtuous karma. So if you rob banks and kill people and are a mafia person and yet have tremendous pleasure and happiness and are never put in jail, does that contradict your teachings on karma? If you have so much happiness, experiencing in this life, the pleasures, basically, in a sense, that comes from previously accumulated good karma. You see? You may take PhDs, but then you can't do it. And someone without a single degree becomes very successful in business. You see this again and again. Why? Previously accumulated karma. It's not just about what you do in this life. Why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, kind of thing. Again, karma. Karma. According to the Lord God. All suffering in the sense of painful feelings of any kind, including even the slightest sufferings occurring in even the mind stream of an arhat, arise from previously accumulated non-virtuous karma. It's impossible for suffering to arise from virtuous karma. We obviously have a mix. Obviously, we've created a mix of karmas, it looks like. Because we have a combination, don't we? We have a lot of variety of experiences, it seems, in life, right? You have a terrible morning meeting, with someone, with your boss, but then you have a nice lunch with a friend. Even within one day, we experience the results of different kinds of karmas. But, why do you have a good friend like that? How are you able to eat good food? Some people eat food and they die of food poisoning, right? So how come you have the karma? You can have a nice meal, you enjoy it, a nice conversation with your friend. It all depends, previously accumulated action, according to this teaching. Quoting the precious Dalai Lama, from non-virtues comes all sufferings, likewise all miserable states. From virtues come all happy realms, and the joys in all rebirths. Consequently, happiness and suffering don't occur in the absence of causes, nor do they arise from incompatible causes such as a divine creator or some kind of primal essence. So Buddhists say it's not about God wanting you to suffer or not to suffer, or some other kind of primal essence, I think is probably spoken of. Is that in the Sankhya tradition? I haven't studied Sankhya. Primal essence. According to theistic Sankhyas, believing in a greater God, the supreme deity, Ishvara, initiates and oversees the creation of the world out of some fundamental nature, prakriti, otherwise known as primal essence, pradhana. That's the Sankhya view, in one of them in short.
Theistic
That's not-
Sankhya.
Hadi?
Theistic Sankhya, because they also have.
They're also a non-theistic.
Non-theistic.
These are the Sankhyas who believe in a creator.
Yeah.
So it's kind of unfair, isn't it? If the creator wants you to be happy, doesn't want your friend to be happy, it's kind of unfair of the creator. It's kind of, not only would you not want to have much faith in such a creator, but Buddhists are saying that it's not the case anyway. There is no creator like that who causes us to suffer or to be happy. It's up to our own action. Rather, happiness and suffering in general come from virtuous, non-virtuous karma. And the various particular happinesses and sufferings arise individually, without even the slightest confusion, from various particular instances of these two kinds of karma. Attaining certain knowledge of the definiteness or non-deceptiveness of karma and its effects is called the correct viewpoint for all Buddhists, and is praised as the foundation of all virtue. So therefore today with the text. So, you have these stories which are given like this very, very ugly woman no one wanted to look at, but she had a beautiful voice. How? Some karma she had created, created to not have such, beautiful form, to have a very ugly form. The people perceived as ugly, but an extraordinarily beautiful voice, which it's very amazing voice. Why? So obviously, you might say that her speech karma was better than certain other kinds of karma, that maybe the kind of speech she used created the cause for her to have a very beautiful voice, which entranced people. But maybe certain actions of body had been created which caused her to not have a beautiful form. So different kind of karma, saying we have to understand causes for different things. How you could be a good, really kind person, but people don't believe what you say. Whereas someone else who isn't such a nice person and who lies a lot, people believe what they say, believes their lies. Why? Again, different karmas. You created karma to have a good, kind mind, but you may also have lied a lot. So now that's karmic result is people don't believe you now. Very often. More so than even someone who lies a lot. But people believe. Why? Because they spoke a lot of truth in the past. Possible. Who knows? Why else? What could be other causes? Apart from God, or there's no cause. Things are just random. Would that work? Do you see anything totally random in the universe? You go into your garden and find, banana trees growing where you put mango seeds. Do we find that kind of thing? Or you prepare all the ingredients for khichdi, and somehow dosa comes out. Or something, It just doesn't happen that way. Particular causes lead to particular results. Very clear. But it's not very clear, is it? Because Buddhism is saying not just causes you created half an hour ago in a kitchen, but causes created in a past life. That's where the difficulty comes in, isn't it? So we need a lot of good karma, faith, conviction in the Buddha. More conviction, I guess, we have in Lord Buddha, then the more we feel that whatever he says is basically probably true, even though I can't understand it yet. And karma is one of the deeply hidden phenomena in Buddhism. There are three categories of phenomena. There's many ways to talk about phenomena. One way is to say manifest, slightly hidden, deeply hidden. So manifest phenomena is probably if you put your hand in front of your face, you can see your hand, what's called a hand. That's a manifest phenomena. Hidden, the slightly hidden would be understanding the emptiness of your hand, according to the teachings on emptiness. But deeply hidden phenomena would be, how can I have such a kind of hand? What are the karmic causes of me having this kind of hand? A hand, first of all, and slightly different from friends' hands and so forth. What's the karmic cause? That's a deeply hidden phenomenon based on many previous actions from past lives. So obviously that deeply hidden phenomenon. Only a Buddha can understand that. So if we don't trust the Buddha, then we can't trust any of these deeper teachings, really. It's one way. But anyway, we can read a lot and get a lot of conviction through, for example, thinking about the stories of children who can remember their past lives and parents, and who take researchers to meet them. Extraordinary things like that happen. And so forth. And of course, some people have memories of past lives, and also some children are born with such amazing abilities that it's hard to account for them. Like knowing certain texts off by heart, or reciting certain things they haven't been taught in this life. I mean, where's that coming from? One has to look at these things with an open mind. So I think we'll stop there. One could have more discussion next time. It's obviously, we should take to heart what Geshe Sopa said about, and Tsongkhapa, about it being the root of the Buddhist path, really. The mundane right view, phenomenal right view. What was the phrase he used? Phenomenal mundane. There's the ultimate right view, and there's the phenomenal right view. Phenomenal aspect of right view, and then the ultimate aspect of right view. Remember, whatever Buddha's teaching is to help us understand the right view, because that's what cuts the root of our pain, of our suffering. That's all Buddha's trying to do, cut our pain forever and help us become enlightened. Everything is aimed towards that. Okay, so let's dedicate all of us to have more and more understanding of karma, so we can properly engage with the teachings with full conviction, and avoid, at least, you see, attain good human life in the future, having created the causes. And through understanding the varieties and particulars of karma, may we create all of the different causes that are said to be there for attaining the different kinds of good qualities that would be very useful to have in a human life, like long life, health, pleasing manner, pleasing speech, the ability to benefit others, to have strength, to have, everything that we need to be of more benefit to ourselves and others, especially others. There are karmic causes for these things. So may we have faith in that and create those causes. And of course, the big cause we have to create is to be connected with the teachings, life to life, and authentic teachings and teachers. That again requires specific causes, aspirational prayers, and so forth. So may that all happen. May all our teachers have long and healthy lives, all their holy wishes be fulfilled. all the centers who are benefiting beings in India and around the world to be successful, to have all the people they need to conduct their programs without obstruction. For people in the world to have more health and happiness and harmony, or fighting with weapons to cease, people to think of benefiting one another, especially at the international level. For people to have more wisdom regarding how we treat the environment. All of us to develop bodhicitta, a very compassionate heart of bodhicitta, working happily and tirelessly for the awakening of all sentient beings, without discouragement. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama have long and healthy life. All his wishes be fulfilled. And may Kabir Saxena quickly return in a new form to guide us. Especially may Tushita Delhi carry on and benefit beings exactly as Lamrim wished. Health and happiness of all of the Sangha. Those who passed away, Tsongkhapa, good human rebirth, connection with the Dharma. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. And, see you. We'll continue with this text tomorrow. On Tuesday, we'll have Medicine Buddha practice.